So his car is stuck in there. He had to borrow a car.
Well, I would have been a week early. I came coming last Wednesday. So, I got all the way to school. And then I was like, where is And then I had to look at my calendar.
The weeks do get a little bit funky coming out of March and February. It like shifts.
Yeah, something, I don't know how I got thrown off, but I was coming. Oh, good, you printed the stuff because...
Just an agenda, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I didn't
that's
print
okay.
off all 79 pages.
Oh, that's okay.
We can
I
share
didn't.
if
I
you
missed
need
your
to.
thing. Well, I had it on my phone, but I missed it. Sorry. Okay. Oh, look, a mint. That's nice.
Lucky you.
Somebody was giving me
There's only
a hint.
one.
Yeah, there's a wrapper.
Yours is gone.
I didn't eat it.
Housekeeping.
Is this back? Oh yeah, I forgot. No air conditioning, right?
Can't feel that fan?
So it is 6 now, so if you want to start.
So we can start without Fred, and that's fine.
We have 5, so we'll be okay. So we know that we'll be
Okay. Let's call this to order. All right. Good evening, everyone. We have roll call. We've been informed Fred will be a few minutes late. Kyle, that's me. I'm here. Dr. Lene Powell-Wilson.
Here.
Patrick Vale.
Here.
Brian Walker.
Here.
Catherine White.
I'm here.
Thank you. And we have a vacancy, which I'm sure we'll discuss more later. Luis, can we ask for addendums to the agenda, or do we have to approve it?
Yeah, what addendum?
Well, it sounded like Pam maybe wanted to add something.
We can just talk about that when we get down to
Okay.
when we get to the minutes.
So we need a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. And then item C, approval of minutes from last month. Did anyone see anything?
These are February's minutes.
I did notice that, yeah.
Oh no. So okay. 1 second. They are. All right. Well, I will bring the correct minutes then forward next month. I apologize for that. And then Pam also pointed out that they said agenda on the top and not minutes, so that can also be changed as well. That is my mistake. I just must have dragged over the wrong file into the folder there. One of the neat things about the new platform that we are on, however, is that I do have them posted. All of those meetings are just posted online now underneath the same portal where I send you guys to, and you can go back to the last meeting and review them there. Not saying that right now we need to do that, but they are there if anyone is curious about looking at those minutes. They're on the Civic Clerk.
We got to see the incorporations from our notes from before.
Yep, so the Kalamazoo mi.portal.civicclerk.com is where all this stuff lives. So thank you for pointing that out, and I will bring them next month, and we'll just have 2 next month.
Okay. So we'll skip that for now. Next item, we open the floor for public comments. Pam?
This is my regular spiel at this time of the year. I wanted to remind everyone that your state preservation conference is happening next month up on Mackinac Island. Have any of or all of you received copies of the brochure for the conference? Okay, Catherine says yes. I don't see anybody else
I don't
shaking
even
their
think that
head yes.
I don't think I got a physical copy yet.
Ah, okay, well, in that case, I'll remind you again that you are all, I believe, members. And so you, through a membership with the Preservation Commission, you can find it online at mhpn.org. And they're still looking for volunteers to help man some of the services, registration, and you know, people going back and forth between rooms, prepping for presentations and things like that. And I think there are still scholarships open. So if you pay a visit to the website and have a look, that will they'll update you on that. Mission Point Inn, where it's being held and where the accommodations are this year, does still have rooms available. Unfortunately, the Great Conference Rate deadline has passed. So it will cost you $200 a night probably to stay there, or almost anywhere else on the island if you come. But if you haven't been there, you should go, just because it's Mackinac Island, it's part of the state, right? But also because, I guess I'll just speak from personal experience. I was raised up as a preservationist by these folks, and they do a lot of good work. And I think it would be a valuable trip for anybody, and all of you, if you decided to go together. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
And our next guest, please.
Hello, everyone. I have some materials that I'll give over here in case you are more of a visual person. Luis, did you want to do any introduction or anything, or you want me just to dive in?
Yeah, I will briefly.
Okay.
And since you already came up, we're just going to flip-flop these two things because Katie is with Building Blocks and is just going to give a presentation, and then we'll do the approval of the minutes and everything afterwards. I could have prefaced it better, but that is completely fine. So Katie, as I said, is the executive. Can you pass one down? Sorry. I was not thinking of that through the best way. Is the executive director of Building Blocks Kalamazoo, and I'll have you explain what that is a little bit more. But this year, they're doing some work on Forest Street, which is in the Vine Local Historic District, and just wanted to speak about those projects that are going to be happening on that street.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. For those of you that may not be aware of Building Blocks, we are a local nonprofit in Kalamazoo. We've actually been in existence for over 27 years at this point. We are a community organizing nonprofit where we work block to block with residents on building community and doing community enhancement projects. So those projects often include exterior home improvement on homes and beautification projects. We work in 6 core neighborhoods in Kalamazoo, so Vine, Douglas, Eastside, Edison, Oakwood, and Northside. And we basically launch a 12-week program in the spring and do the same 12-week program in the summer on more sites where we recruit residents. We train resident facilitators to lead this program. They conduct resident meetings, and we work with residents to select projects that they want to see done on their homes. We have been in Vine for a very long time and have a large presence there, not only with our 12-week program, but for blocks that want to continue to stay committed to this work and to each other. We call them block action groups. We continue to fund their neighborhood enhancement projects year by year. So maybe you've seen the flowers at the Oak Street Community Garden, or you've seen the solar lights that we've recently put up in the Rainy Osborne area. So those are also Building Block sites. Most recently, we've been launching some neighborhood-wide and city-wide initiatives to help get more resources on the block level. So last year, we distributed 200 Ring cameras across the Kalamazoo area for the city of Kalamazoo. We've also been doing a Light Up the North Side initiative that was funded by Larry Bell, where we put over 60 solar lights on 6 new blocks in the North Side, which adds up to over 200 solar lights that we've done in the North Side the last 3 years. So anyway, the reason that I'm here with you today is because Luis and I have been partnering, and we realize that there is just such an alignment here between the work that Building Blocks is doing to work with residents on repairing their homes and your mission around preserving the historic homes in the Vine District. And we think that there's just a lot of potential that we could potentially work together on this. We are on Forest Avenue this year. We had our first resident meeting on Monday. We had 9 households that participated with an additional 5 that would like to participate but weren't able to come on Monday. And so really, I'm here to tell you about Building Blocks and tell you that we're working with residents on preserving their homes. And we just really appreciate how Luis has been very hands-on, willing to come on site, help us figure out what projects need to be, how do we stay in compliance with the historic guidelines and rules. And so we know on Forest, we have several residents that feel pretty dire about repairing their handrails. And so we're going to be working with Luis on making sure we use the appropriate wood and do all of the projects within the compliance of the historic district. We're being very intentional this year about making sure all of our projects are approved. And so in the name of partnership, I wanted to see if you have any questions around Building Blocks. And just the final thing is to see if this is something that you would be interested in providing funding for. All of our sites have block allocations based on resident participation. So if we get more than 10 households participating on a site, they have an allocation of about $6,000 for project funds. Something around $2,000 or $3,000 in addition for Forest residents would be really helpful in making sure that if there's any extra costs incurred on staying within compliance of the historic rules, that we can still get those projects done and make sure that those residents are preserving those homes in the correct way. Any questions for me?
Thank you. That was really helpful. So you mentioned Larry Bell funded the North Side project. Where are your other funding sources coming from?
I write a lot of grants. That is a big part of my job. So some of our big funders include the Gilmore Foundation, Stryker Johnson Foundation, Kalamazoo Community Foundation. We have relationships with banks such as Old National Bank, PNC, Advia. All of those, I just basically write grant applications every year, and then they award funding that they see appropriate for us. Last year was the first year where we received funding from the city of Kalamazoo, and that was because of the Ring camera initiative that they were trying to figure out for several years how to distribute the Ring cameras into the neighborhoods, and me and my staff were able to do it within 32 days. So we are continuing to kind of find new sources for revenue, but mostly it's the big foundations in the city.
I saw the window and shutter repairs as a part of this, and we had talked about the window repair workshop in Vine. Is there some way to work those two things together with, the Forest Street and doing some sort of window repair workshop?
Kid, you can correct me if I'm wrong and speak more to it as well if I miss any gaps there, but I think that the scope of the time right now that they're going to be having for these projects of 12 weeks would probably preclude them from doing window repairs, I'm guessing, on Forest Street because of the guidelines. And it sounds like there's an immediate want and need for the porches right on Forest Street, and I think that that's something that can be completed within that timeline, at least for this year, and the short-term stuff. But you can speak more to it if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think timing is really kind of the puzzle piece that we're figuring out this year. And so what we're working with Forest residents on is what can be approved through the administrative review process and what would potentially need to go for a larger discussion with the commission. We are gearing Forest residents towards projects that either don't hit any issues with the historic guidelines or can be administratively reviewed through that process. I think that there is a lot of potential for us, like with that larger timeline, but just for this year, we're kind of like feeling out how this partnership works and how we can make sure to set those residents up for success.
I do think that down the line, window repair workshops could be something that there could be a potential then for partnering with, because repairs would be administratively reviewable, obviously, in the historic realm of things, but it would be more of an educational bent, I feel, than it would be the actual rehabilitation of a component.
I think there's a lot of potential for also, like, we do often give residents the opportunity to attend like community homeworks, home repair workshops. And so we always would be able to like provide more information about those repairs. And just to clarify, Building Blocks pays for all the project materials and pays the resident leaders stipends to do this work. So they are getting these projects paid for with the understanding that they are going to be working with their neighbors at community work days to build relationships and connections and also repair their homes and make their yards beautiful.
What do you have to qualify to have? Did I type it down? Did you? I'm sorry. Did you? Do you have to qualify to get assistance with some of these repairs and things you're doing?
It's all block by block. So basically there's two ways to get into our Building Blocks program. The traditional way, which was neighborhood association directors would apply a specific block to Building Blocks, and then we would award that block, based on our information, and that's where we would be. Anyone on that block can qualify and be part of the Building Blocks work. There's no income criteria or anything like that. Because we had some neighborhood association directors that stopped around COVID submitting applications, we actually opened it up to the public. And so if you are a resident and you want to self-organize and you want to get your residents together and apply to Building Blocks, we actually find those to be some of our most successful sites. So as long as you're within one of the core neighborhoods, we will process your application.
Thank you.
I guess I should tell you the paperwork you have in front of you. So the brochure is something that we use for recruitment. So our resident facilitators will take this out door knocking along with a flyer to their first resident meeting and say, hey, come attend. What kind of projects do you want on your home? Let's connect with our neighbors. We see on our survey results that residents feel safer. They take more pride in their neighborhoods after going through the Building Blocks process. That a lot of the fear or isolation or mistrust that happens along neighborhoods really gets sussed out by providing hands-on projects for residents to collectively work on. The other paper is our 2022 accomplishments, so you can get an idea of the kinds of projects that we did last year. And then on this little cloud over here, it shows the new initiatives. These were just new to 2022, and I started kind of highlighting some of those as well.
I have one more question. You mentioned that you've been in Kalamazoo for quite some time. Is this a part of some sort of more national network, or is this is something that's homegrown in Kalamazoo and only exists here?
It's homegrown to Kalamazoo, and it only exists here. And anytime I talk to a colleague in a different state, all I hear is, God, I wish I had something like this in my city.
Do you know about when it began? I know in old newsletters I've seen it in the neighborhood newsletters back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Building Blocks was founded by Professor Kim Cummings. He was a K College sociology professor. He created a class for the K College students to teach them about community organizing and urban sociology. So the students were assigned blocks and then basically were told, hey, you're the recruiters, you're the organizers, go out, door knock, tell everyone about this opportunity, bring residents together at meetings, select projects, and conduct conduct community work days. So it was actually a spring class. I was part of that class as a K College student in 2006 and loved it so much. I was a TA for the class for the duration of my time at K College. So it was definitely a huge career decision for me and led me into this work. So it's kind of come full circle.
So 1980s might be too early. I'm recalling it, so I think 2006?
Yeah, 1995 is our official start date.
Okay. Thanks.
I know as a past resident in Vine, I actually was doing some plantings in Dutton Park with Kim.
Yep.
I guess my main concern would be how we would designate funds be used for preservation exclusively, because obviously we're not really related to reforestation and flowers and that kind of thing. But if you're doing an ask, then it would need to be something related to our mission specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. I do not expect that reforesting the vine would be something that you all would be interested in funding. We've got a lot of people passionate about native trees that we can kind of hit up, talk to about that. But this particularly, I think, is about forest and knowing that we have projects on forest that are going to require the extra steps of being in compliance with the historic district. I think that this is a potential pilot that we can see how this goes, and ultimately could be something that if it goes well for you all and it goes well for building blocks, we could even bring in the Vine Neighborhood Association here. I think there's a great potential here to be like, hey, we care about your experience in your neighborhood. We care about preserving homes. Let's find a way to do this equitably, and we're here for you. And so I think that that's the value add to this. And Luis and I are talking a lot, and so I can do all of the reporting, receipts, expense, whatever you would be required to need to know that this only went towards projects that were part of the historic preservation. That would not be a problem.
Do we have an idea on what sort of dollar value range we're talking about?
My suggestion would be between $2,000 and $3,000.
And what's your timeline? I know that are you currently working in forest, or is it something that's upcoming?
Yep, so we are currently working in forest. So we had our first resident meeting on Monday. Our goal is to have all of our projects done by June 21st, the first day of summer. So we have a couple months right now. We have got a bunch of K College sports teams coming May 20th to help us push gravel and help with projects across the city where we can. And then residents will work till the 20th to get projects done. So that is our timeline. For our block action groups, whether it's Rainey Osborne or Burr Oak or Oak Street, we will continue to do projects with them, but a lot of those projects are more centered around community gardens.
I agree. And your project is great. First time I've heard of something like this, and I think it's a great idea. But in keeping with the focus of preservation, I agree we need to have some kind of stipulation that the grant is for, something like a porch repair or a window or something like that, that is specific to preservation and safety. But I personally think it would be a good idea as long as we have that verbiage that it's for some preservation project. I say we approve this. The other thing is, are you requesting $2,000 or $3,000 a year, a month?
Oh, no, this would be, I see this as 1 year, one time, and then an opportunity to reflect and see, did this benefit both of our missions? Was this a helpful partnership? And then we can reflect and maybe go from there.
Cool. Well, that's my recommendation.
I'm gonna go back to something Patrick brought up, which was about the window repair. And I think where I see the alignment for certain would be the the how project that the Historic Preservation Commission had been involved in, which is teaching. Window repair was the example. I think that might be why that came up. So, I mean, I could be on board with the financial donation too, but I think where we align most certainly would be in the fact that we're looking to influence and teach and help and learn, and along with the community, you know, how to maintain and how to keep these old structures. So does that fit into the scheme of a relationship also?
Yeah, you've got my brain starting to spiral here. One thing that we did with a group called Action in the Neighborhood, it's the 9 blocks surrounding the Ada corridor on the north side. The residents decided with a partnership with Community Homeworks that if they attended a certain amount of the educational classes, that they got like more project funding for the projects that they wanted to see done. I'm not saying we have to do something like that, but it worked very well. And residents who wouldn't have otherwise gone to those classes found them very helpful. Now that was pre-COVID. I'm not sure if Community Homeworks has gone in person again, but anyway, I'm open to those kinds of ideas and could see where in the future, you know, if we say, hey, you've got to come to a certain amount of classes to be able to access this grant, or a class, however we want to put those stipulations on, we'd love to talk about that. I think that might be like a second year thing though.
So I have questions, less about building blocks, which sounds like a great program, and I think that there's possibilities for alignment, but more about our ability to grant funds and the pot that we currently have, where it's been committed, how we can responsibly steward those funds in a way that we're not depleting it too quickly, because of course there's building blocks seems deserving, but there's of course Community Homeworks who we worked with in the past, and there are others. So I'm curious, Luis, if you have any information on what that might look like, especially as we move into the O'Connor Fund grant process in the next few months here as well.
Yeah, and I think too, so just for the sake of logistics, I don't think we'd be able to make a vote today anyways, because it's not an action item on there, but the presentation certainly has opened it up for us. So that's my understanding, that is without the action item, you cannot vote on money things. I wanted to give you the chance to present and stuff, and that's not to say that there can't be one, but I just wanted us all to know that before we move on. So that's the first thing. Second, we obviously have the 2 different kind of groups of money that we're going to be looking at all the time as the Preservation Commission, one being the money that we have allocated through the city, which we have the financial report that we can look at in a moment, the other one being the O'Connor Fund monies. The O'Connor Fund monies are truly at the whim of the market, in my opinion, all the time. The way that it moves and stuff. And I apologize for not including it in this report. You know, guaranteeing $10,000 last year to Community Homeworks, guaranteeing 10 for the granting program that we have is last year the 10, and then it's on the agenda this year for the 10 for Community Homeworks, and then this too. So looking at this year, it would be 12 then, or 22 total, right? 10 for the granting program, 10 for Community Homeworks, and 2 or 3 for the building blocks, if that was to happen. I would honestly have to say that I would lean on Kalamazoo Community Foundation to advise where money was taken out, if it was taken out of the O'Connor Fund. If we were to take it all out of one spot, that's the only place we could take everything out of one spot. If we wanted to take some of the money out of the Kalamazoo City Fund, we could also do that. And if you look at the financial report, we have about $7,000 left in that account. Right now, the grant-making value of one of the O'Connor Fund pots is $57,000, and the value in the other is $15,000. At the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, again, I would lean on the financial advisors there to guide us the best way to spend that money and understand what would be fiscally responsible choices regarding the dispensation of funds, gifts, things like that.
How would the timing of that work then? If we're talking about end of June, and we wouldn't be voting on this until next month, potentially, and then if there's some sort of grant-making process that we have to go through, or they would have to go through to get that, I mean, would that timing work?
So I can't speak to that as well as Katie. I know that when we, I guess I now need to go back over to see when the money was taken out, when we did it for community homeworks, because that's not something that's readily available off the top of my head, when the funds were actually given out after we all signed the paperwork and gave it over to community homeworks for the money to come out of the O'Connor Fund, which is where it came out last year when we gave them money for the critical home repair program. I think something else that I can speak to then is the concerns that were raised by you all regarding the alignment of the projects and where the money will be spent. The paperwork, I think, was something that was used then as a binding agreement between us as the grantors and then the grantee to understand that these funds are only to be used for certain kinds of projects. And we can look at language that we find appropriate to make sure that it aligns with historic preservation and the rules of the historic districts where applicable. Obviously, this one being on forest, it would apply to all the properties that would be considered for these projects.
I think it's a tight turnaround, but it's not an impossible turnaround. You know, if this was something that was approved next month, I imagine what we could do is from there, we would just know that it was happening, so we could go ahead and spend the money, and then we would just probably do a reimbursement request. And if the project's already done by then, that it's okay, because the funding can come later. Like, we can front it, I guess.
Yeah, I think looking forward, as we begin to make grants and as it gets kind of out into the world and the community, we have funds to make grants. I'm thinking about how we make sure that we are being responsible with the funds that we have and making sure that they are dispersed in a way that makes the most sense with our mission as well as in the community. And again, Building Blocks seems like a great program. But we are in the tail end now of developing the O'Connor Fund Grant-Making Committee, and that's been quite a process, quite rigorous in developing the framework for that. And I'm wondering if these kind of more ad hoc grant propositions are going to be coming, if that's something we should consider in a more holistic sense, and how we want to handle those. Because if we're going to be getting them more and more often as we begin to make grants, I think we need to think about it more holistically instead of in an ad hoc, case-by-case type of example. Just a thought.
Completely, I agree. And I think it's also then worth thinking about where the funds are being put and the way that the O'Connor Fund did not grow as much as I thought it did, honestly, last year. And there were hits that are taken, and then there's recuperations that are taken, but when the money is put into the market, that is going to be the reality of the situation. Not to say that the money is making anything in the city, but when you put it, then there's obviously risk when you're putting money into the market that's associated inherently. And I think that's something else then to consider too. But I agree with the thoughts regarding ad hoc competitive grant making, those two things being separately, and then also, I guess, the ad hoc being the gifts that will be made, in essence, to different parties.
So were you aware that we just introduced a grant-making program this year?
You know, I saw the grant-making process around the preserving historic buildings for nonprofits in public use. So I saw, we rent a building, or we rent an office, so we don't qualify. But I did see that, and that was very exciting. So
The grant program would not work for Building Blocks because it's not going to nonprofit-owned buildings. It's going to either rented buildings or to owner-occupied buildings.
But that's mostly just to point out that it's taken us a year to get to this point. So a request for a fast turnaround, I don't know if it's very feasible, honestly.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was asking about through the O'Connor Fund versus through the funds that we have direct control over, if the timing wouldn't necessarily work through the grant-making process versus something that we do here.
Right. And then I think that hinges a lot on is it next month we're planning to examine our goals and missions?
I think that would be more realistic because we had such a loaded plate this month, yeah. Yes.
So, anyway, it's something we would definitely be able to discuss and work on, but yeah, I don't know how much we can do right now. Any other questions or comments for our guest?
Just again, thank you for coming. That was really great and informative, and I wasn't aware of the program before, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the time. And, I just think that it's a possible quick win for Vine residents. And if it's this year or next year or 5 years from now, let's just keep talking and see where there's potential partnerships here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katie. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, step on to the sheets you were just referencing for the financial report, please.
Sorry, I'm not turned on here. Yeah, so right now, the only stuff that we have right now chalked up, and I know that we still need to get some money out to some people for a couple of things. We need to get money out for people for Preservation Month things. That'll take some paperwork filing to get them W-9s and get them registered as vendors, I believe, with the city. We also have some money that we need to dispense out to Mark Ferraro for the window workshop, so those will be things that are coming that are not reflected right now. Right now, the only expense that will be reflected is for the food that we purchased for the students at the window workshop. If you move on over to the revenues, the $300 is the revenues that we generated for the window workshop. So that's the up-to-date example of what's happening right now.
And then the Preservation Month, you said, is not reflected, so that's the guest speakers.
Yep.
Okay.
That's a perfect segue if we want to move into Pam's report.
Works for me, unless there's other comments and questions on the financial report. Who is our treasurer? I know it was Lene. Do we have one? You? Oh, okay.
Okay, Pam, you can come on up if you'd like to present on your first report. And then you can stay up if you'd like to present on the second report as well, yeah.
Okay,
If you could.
thank
scroll
you.
down to that.
We're making progress on the Preservation Month presentation. We made contact last week with the author of The Guardians of Michigan, and he's excited about coming. We had a good number of flyers that went out to various locations today. There will be more going out next week. Sarah Tripp, who is acting on behalf of the Southwest Michigan AIA, has started an Instagram campaign for it, and she is sending out her first ones, I think it's May 11th, a week and a half before. It might be May 1st and May 11th. Do I have them written down? Yes, May 1st and May 11th. So that's happening. I've got it on my Facebook page, and I'm encouraging other people to share it, and I have some other photographs from the book that I'll be sending out. Sarah says she's going to keep track of how many AIA members are coming because they are offered learning credits for being there. So that looks good. Any questions about that? Are you all planning to come? Good, 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 good. Yes? Lene? Just teasing. Hope you can. I hope you can. Any questions? Okay. I didn't get an answer from Luis this morning when I asked him really quickly if we have any applications for the O'Connor Fund Grant Program yet. do we?
Sorry, I was playing catch up because I just got back from
Yeah,
vacation.
that's fine.
So I haven't seen any come into my inbox yet. No, I know that I have 2 interested parties, I believe now. So I went out to Urban Alliance and spoke with them about the possibility of looking at it, and I walked to the church with them. Urban Alliance is in an old church, so on Stockbridge, and just looked at some of the exterior things that I thought would be good for it. And then the Vine Neighborhood Association also reached out to me today about the possibility of using it. So
Okay. We will hope that one or both of those end up being
yeah,
applications.
and interested parties. So I think that that's good.
I've been thinking about this a lot because it's like if you plan a party for 18 months and nobody can come, what happens? And I'm going to choose, if that happens, I'm going to choose to take that as an indication that we might have some more work to do. And one of the things I thought of today, beyond what you see in the report, was to actually start compiling a list of owners whose buildings meet the eligibility criteria for the grant and reaching out to them directly. And in fact, I made a call to one of the churches I know today and asked about who to talk to. And most churches have a buildings person or a buildings and grounds committee. It might be helpful. I don't know a church, I've never known a church not to have a project, at least one, in their back pocket. And we have lots of them in the city. So, but also Kalamazoo Public Schools. You know, I was reminded that they do preservation work too when I saw one of your applications this year. I read the packet and saw that the work was done there on the clock. I don't think it was done on the tower as well, but on the clock, and that's a start. But I think we do have, the organizing committee has one more meeting that we have agreed to work on, and I think I'll bring that up, and we'll see if we can put together a list. Perhaps Luis or your predecessor has a list of contacts at different churches who have called, you know, over the years and asked questions. So that might be a good place to start. We have city tax records we can comb through after we identify buildings. You know, we can do one of those big maps on the wall thing and say, you know, here's one, here's one, here's one. And make sure that they get a direct note from the Preservation Commission about the availability of the grant program. Yes, ma'am.
So Fred and I met with Shiante of Shares, and we were just talking about the church on the north side, AME. Is that designated?
It is not designated to the best of my knowledge unless someone else has worked on it, but it doesn't have to be.
No.
It just has to be 50 years or older.
Right, I
and-
was just asking because we were thinking maybe that could be one that we could start seeing if we can get it designated. But in the process, they could certainly.
As a nonprofit, owning a building like that makes them eligible in that regard anyway. There are some other eligibility criteria.
Right.
Have any of you read the grant application? You might, it might, I know Catherine has, I know Louise has, but you might be interested to see how we've set it up. And it's, I think for a program in its infancy, to have limited it the way we did is probably a good thing, because it will keep it manageable. And if we can continue, if the O'Connor Fund continues to grow, either at a fast rate or a slow rate, you know, we may be able to make those grants annually for a good period of time to come. I will say that I'm a little bit concerned about making other grants other than from the competitive grant program from the O'Connor Fund specifically, because I do think that that might put our ability to fund the competitive grant program into the future in some uncharted territory. So one of the reasons that it's grown as fast as it has over the 20 years, or to a type the bit that it has, is that for a couple of decades, we didn't take any money out at all. So, but back to the organizing committee, do you have any questions? And do you know anybody that can be an applicant? Because if you do, make sure you call them.
I certainly do. And I don't know if someone else wants to reach out to, I don't know how appropriate it is for me on the board, the decision-making board, and ex officio member to reach out to someone unless you think it is appropriate, but I think, I'm surprised that Allen Chapel has not reached out regarding.
It could be that they just haven't gotten the information.
No, and that very
And
well
I think
could
in
be.
that regard, if any of us are just acting as a conveyor of the information and not making any promises.
Yes.
Or having discussions, I don't see that as an ethical issue at
Yep.
all. We're sharing information that's already public.
Yep.
So,
supposed
yeah,
to
I would definitely
meet.
suggest,
We're supposed to meet with them, aren't we, coming up? So we
We
could
should-
pass that on.
Share
but
it well in advance of meeting with them too, to make sure that they have ample time to look at it, and we can share it with them electronically, so it doesn't need to be, physically transmitted. But I know the pastor there, so I can send it over.
in fact, you could send a copy of the press release that went out today.
I could. And there was a press release that went out today, and I mean, I was very pleased with the amount of responses that I got just initially from the first press release. Just not everyone that did respond from that met the criteria.
I do think it would be ethical, it would be okay to say, I think that you, whatever project, I think that you meet the eligibility requirements and you should consider this. I think that is okay to say. Sometimes I think people see these long lists of eligibility and their eyes gloss over a little bit, and I think we've done a really nice job with this grant program and that it's not too long, but, excuse me, but just to give a small nudge, not to say, we promise you're going to get it, but just a simple, you seem to meet the eligibility requirements, you should take a look at this.
Invitation to apply.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that's when I think next year at this time, when we have a list of people that we can send that invitation to, and we will, won't we, Catherine? And Kyle? And Luis? I think that will help. I also think we probably, over the next year, need to look a little bit at the programming side of it. I think perhaps one of our oversights, as I was filling out a dummy application for a planning project, just to test the system a couple of weeks ago, Luis can tell you I just about had a hissy fit because I couldn't make it work and the questions weren't right. In their infinite wisdom, Luis and Neil Conway in the communications department, at some point, they parted the ways on the application and gave a customized version of the one for building projects and for planning projects. And I didn't know that. And I was looking at this application thinking, it's not all here, but it really was. But in general, I think that the way that the documents are worded lean heavily toward the building side and not so much to the planning side, which I think especially right now is as valuable, if not more so. So that's my final word for tonight. And if you have no questions, I'll go sit down. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
All right, brings us down to the flip side, F4, Section 106, Quarter 1 report.
Yep, here we are again. It's that time of year. You might notice there's a lot less this year in the actual review side of things of this. It's halfway responsible, or I guess that's halfway due to the fact that we did have the Edison survey that was conducted in the past couple of years that determines what things in Edison would need to be reviewed and not be reviewed. That's half, and the other half is that in speaking with SHPO, some of the designations that we had before from the old survey are not something that they recognize, so potentially historic study areas is not something that they recognize as being a category, so I've moved those away from the National Register eligible or eligible side of things and just moved them into something that is not. needed to be reviewed on the historic side of things. So that, I just wanted to explain to you all why, I think last year we had a lot more in the first quarter than this in the historic end. Again, Section 106 is the review of projects that affect National Register eligible or National Register or historic properties locally that use federal funds. And then I review them if those funds are going to be used on these properties. This year, so far, we only have one that affected a potential, a National Register eligible property, 1615 Lay Boulevard. Appendix C of our programmatic agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office says that there's a list of projects that do not need further review, and all of these proposed things for 1615 fell within those parameters. A lot of the stuff was inside, or it was not going to, in effect, change the exterior appearance of the property or detract from the historic character or significance of the property. The next page, however, is the list of things that I have reviewed that are not National Register eligible or included on any kind of historic register, or they're not designated at all. It's obviously, maybe not obviously, it's a lot longer. I don't know if you guys have any questions in looking at this.
Doesn't seem so.
Awesome.
All right. Brings us to G1. Looks like Lene's term may be at an end.
Yeah, this is something that I didn't catch, and then the clerk reached out to me and said, hey.
Weren't you supposed to give us an update of where we all stood in our terms?
Yep, I got it myself, so, and I hope that there will be, I needed to do a better job of this. Obviously, Sharon gave me a table from before, and then we had some turnover, so your term did expire. You were correct, and you had an inkling, and I didn't follow up on it quick enough, so I apologize for that. But she does need to be reappointed if you all want her to stay on the board, is the reality of the situation.
And would only be mayor required if it was beyond the 2-term and a gap kind of thing?
It's still recommending her reappointment to the mayor, is the verbiage for the motion.
So we just call for a vote? Or do we need a nomination or something?
I move to reappoint Dr. Lene Powell-Wilson to the commission.
I second it.
No, is that not the right
No.
way to say it?
So you guys will be looking to recommend the reappointment of Dr. Powell-Wilson to the mayor.
What Louise said.
So moved.
Now, keep in mind, 'cause you're next,
Yeah.
because you were a year after me.
I thought I came in like a month after you.
Oh, you better go back and check.
I mean, I think it was right around the same, I think, yeah.
I want the clerk coming at you.
Right. I thought you were a year after me.
I don't think so. Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
was
But
it
I
was
know
2020.
we're close.
Yeah. Do we need to like,
We can only work on what we know right now.
do we have to like voice vote, like, roll call vote for this?
I would appreciate a roll call just so all the Ts and Is are crossed and dotted respectively. And then was there a second on the motion that Catherine made that was amended? The corrected vote?
didn't
I
you?
know that he,
Second it.
Fred, second.
okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we'll just go in the order as listed for the vote. So first would be Fred,
Yes?
me, yes, and then obviously abstain, I guess, if it's about yourself. Patrick,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Catherine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll get the paperwork drafted up and sent over to the clerk tomorrow for that.
And check on Catherine. Maybe we can lump them together, so it's one swipe of the pen.
We'll have to make another vote anyways, but I will check on, I'm looking right now.
I guess so, yeah. If we're all set with that, did everyone have a chance to review the applications for this year's Historic Preservation Awards? Do we need to summarize each as we go through, or just introduce them to the floor? How does this work? I don't know.
I think it's up to you all. I do try to send it in advance so the materials can be reviewed prior to coming to the meeting. So I would hope that it would be a true review. If people want to jump to things so they can be seen on the screen, we can certainly do that for you all.
Could you give us a reminder of our criteria?
Excuse me, we're looking at projects or people that exemplify historic preservation here in the city of Kalamazoo. We only have one institutional application this year, and the rest of them are properties.
There's a person as well.
And, I'm sorry, yes, and a person. Institutional/person. So one person, one institution, and then properties. So just looking to see that they've contributed to the spirit of historic preservation in the in Kalamazoo. Kyle, if you want to just go through them, obviously in the order that is listed, I think would be the smoothest way to do it. We can discuss them, or you all can discuss them at that level if you would like. I think that would probably be more effective if you need to than doing a complete, yes?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Isn't it still an orders requirement that any project work meet the secondary material standards?
Yeah, I can pull up the whole list if you would like, and they need to be complete. No. Yep.
Assuming work was even done, as apparently one of the applications didn't show any work being done.
Is that the South Street one?
Yes.
I thought that was active. But in the description, it says don't list the building.
Can you make sure your microphone's on, Fred?
Yeah, what does it say? In the narrative,
And are you talking about a certain project or a certain application right now?
of our application, it says do not list the work done. Let's see, narrative form. Please do not submit a list of work or specifications.
Yeah, and I think that that's more in the spirit of saying there is a finite amount that we'd like to read, so I don't think it's worth if I redid an entire home for someone to tell me the amount of nails that were bought and the amount of floors that were done yeah.
What was done, like in that one that was referred to, what was it like before we saw the pictures?
Yep. So, I think and that can be cleaned up in the future too, and I apologize, but that, to my understanding, was an effort to make sure that we're not getting a laundry list of everything.
Okay.
So we all don't have to read a laundry list of the work that was done in minute detail.
Refresh my memory, is it 3 years that they would have had to have the repairs done, or
5 years.
it's 5 years? Got it, sorry. Wouldn't this one here disqualify, because?
So if we're speaking about a specific one, maybe we wait until we get to that one to speak about it.
All right.
Facilitate the conversation smoothly, if that's okay with you all. And I think that would make it too, so if we want to talk about things, then we wouldn't have to summarize them, but you all can deliberate over them as we move through them. So I suppose without further ado, we can slide into the first one there. And Heather, if you would go down to page 15. So this is the one for the Stewart Area Restoration Association for the Woodward School. This was stewardship per the application, ongoing preservation of a historic resource with necessary appropriate maintenance to preserve the character and integrity of the historic resource. The narrative for this application said the clock was made operative. The clock was made operative on the clock tower of the Woodward School. The school was built in 1930. The clock has now worked in over 30 years. And then they have some pictures. Pam alluded to this earlier. I'm sure that Fred can also speak to it. To my knowledge, this was largely, or I don't know if it was fully or largely confined to the inner workings of the clock there, to actually, what made it tick, so.
I think that one's cool, so I'm sorry. I'm a geek.
Yeah, the application's quite brief, but I think the project has merit. A clock tower with a non-functional clock. Yeah, right, just a
A
tower.
historic building.
Right, so I think even though it was not the entire tower that was restored, the functionality of the clock does make a difference. Yeah.
And yeah, because I'm sure they don't make those pieces and things, the equipment to repair something like that now. And it just, it takes a special person or somebody who knows what they're doing, how to repair that type of clock. So in and of itself, they kept the integrity of the original intent of that clock. So in that light, I think it's cool.
Yeah, Mr. Bright got the clock working back in the 1990s. The persistence of one of our board members on the Stewart Neighborhood Board, Cindy Whittingham, saw this through, but had to find the people who could fix it was a major challenge. And then the school district said, hey, let's get in gear, but it was her push and persistence that saw that come out.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. It sounds like it was so is the person who nominated, the Cynthia Whittingham, is she involved with KPS or is she?
No.
No. See, that to me makes the application stronger, and that we want to encourage the Kalamazoo public school system to maintain their historic structures, and there's a lot of work to be done. So recognizing them for this, frankly, significant but still relatively small improvement might be a nice carrot.
All right, so we move to approve this one?
I'd like to move to approve the Woodward School clock repair for Historic Preservation Award.
I second.
Is this a roll call situation again? When in doubt. It's a valid question. All right, we're going down the line. Fred?
Yes.
Me, yes. Lene?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yep.
Ryan?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the next application here. This is again for historic structure. This is for 1219 South Park Street. I know it doesn't say right on there, on the first page, but for the Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services building, nominated in commercial, institutional, governmental projects, and for rehabilitation. This one's a little bit lengthier, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I hope that you guys have read it prior again, and you all can deliberate.
This is my concern. The accident was in 2020. That's why I wanted to know how long, because it was 5 years, so I think we're good, right? We're good, okay. I just wanted to make sure, sorry.
Do you know how old this structure is?
Mid-century modern, it says that 70s.
It says the style, but it could have been built in 2010.
No, this is probably 50s to 60s. So
Earlier than that.
yeah.
So then is that considered his?
It is.
50 years.
50 years or older,
50,
so
gotcha.
1973 or prior.
Got it.
To me, that looks modern, I mean, recent instead of historic, which says something.
I mean, you know, may I ask a question about that one?
Yeah.
Did you get any before pictures?
I did not.
Aren't they required? So you can actually see the changes?
That's what I was thinking of the other one.
I can't speak to if it's required. I can't recall an application, but I did look up a Google Street View of it. And there's significant improvement from the Google Street View, but they didn't submit any before pictures.
And the way that it's worded just says 5, showing the project itself, important details, and the project within the greater context, ellipses, of the streetscape and close-ups. So
And then would they have had pictures if the car went through it?
most likely.
Okay, well, I'm just saying.
The insurance company.
Maybe that would be a nice addition for next year, to Pam's point, is to have.
Yeah, and I've reused the application from what it was before, and it says for interior rehabilitation that before pictures are especially important in this category, but it's not specified for exterior rehabilitation or just general rehabilitation for this, so.
Did you have to give them any approvals? This isn't mine. Or is it not covered?
I don't think that 1219 is in it, and this happened before I started, admittedly, if the work was conducted in 2020. I can look, but.
Can we hold off on this one?
I mean, I think this is a strong application. I mean, I think that the work is significant, that despite the fact that we don't have before pictures, we didn't ask for them, this seems to me like an easy approval.
Very detailed in listing the work and specifications without getting too nitpicky, without getting into materials.
It's just sad that it
So
floods
kinda
every year.
gives you a visual as to what work was done, but it's more proof to see it.
I know I walked through it. They had some sort of open house before they did all this. But that would be mostly interior related. I didn't really look much at the outside.
Are there concerns about this? Otherwise?
I mean, I think the work is good, don't get me wrong, it's just, we don't know what was there before, which I guess it really doesn't matter. And I just want to make sure it's historic, because it is kind of borderline.
Well, I mean, the mid-century modern architecture in that period is historic per the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines.
Okay.
So I think the structure itself is eligible
Okay.
from that line of thinking.
Okay.
I think we don't have information here as to, like, they've talked about window replacement. We don't know if they matched the existing architecture
Right.
to, whatever. But, we don't have those kind of details, but I think that otherwise the application is one of the lengthier that we've received.
And isn't in our application, aren't they supposed to put in there when the structure was originally built? Is that in the application? I don't. Because there's nothing in here talking about when it was built.
The ones we've seen go through before had that in them.
And, and on the application, which I took from things before, there's no requirement to.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I suppose if I was going to submit one of these and was looking to be awarded it, I would probably include that. I think what Catherine is saying also speaks to it, and especially because there was, as we've gotten finally to the point where mid-century modern has come back into vogue, or it's become historic. I think that we collectively as preservationists, I can't say this because I wasn't part of this, I guess, but realized that there's probably a lot of that architecture that was lost because of the closeness to it. And as we've gotten far enough away from it, which is the story for all preservation, time and time again throughout America, just because it might feel close to us does not mean that it's not important. And just because that time might not feel very far, it has reached that threshold now, and it does represent an important time of architectural history, architectural American history.
Right, and to jump off of that, the application notes this is one of the few examples of mid-century modern architecture in the Vine neighborhood, which I think only bolsters the application. Okay. So I'll move to nominate 1219 Park for one of the Historic Preservation Awards.
I'll second it.
Luis, did you have any other thoughts on this one from a personal perspective, and probably the most trained in evaluating such things?
No, I was just going to look up, and I don't think that there's bearings on it. And I think, too, if this is something that we're interested in changing, the awards nomination process, then I think it's something that should be discussed as the group, obviously, moving forward. If there's questions regarding what questions are to be placed on the application, what we want to see, what we don't want to see. That's something that I'd like you all to reflect upon, and then you can give me the notes, and this can be redrafted for the future of these awards, because the application now is the same one that's been, I'm sure, used for I don't know how long. So that was not related to your question at all, obviously. I did want to see if this was located within the historic district. I'm not sure that that has much bearing upon it, because I know that there's been a lot of interest in looking at properties that are not located within historic districts, and looking to give them nomination and recognition for historic preservation work here in the city of Kalamazoo. And this one is not, but it still is located within the Vine neighborhood. To piggyback then off what Catherine was saying too, and what Matt said in the application, I think in a neighborhood like Vine, first of all, it is really important to note that you do get a complete spectrum of structures, it seems to me, from all ages of America, not all ages of American architecture that would have been present, here since people started, since Euro-American settlers came here and started building structures. Vine, on Davis Street alone, has a lot of those houses that are representative of those different styles, but you certainly don't get a lot of mid-century moderns included in that. So while it's not in the historic district, it is still in the Vine neighborhood, and it is representative of a style that might not be highlighted in a lot of other places within that neighborhood.
All right, thank you. We'll do a roll call as before. Going down the line, Fred?
Yes.
Me? Yes. Lene?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yep.
Ryan?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Alrighty. Moving on to the next application. Sorry, I have to scroll through a lot of pictures. It's still loading for me, but so this is for 530 West South Street, the wood Upjohn house. The narrative here is it's the original Upjohn house. Francois rehabbed the Henderson Castle, purchased this home to restore to the historic beauty and give a unique bed and breakfast opportunity to step back in time in Kalamazoo history. I guess as a rule of thumb now, I'll read them if they're like a paragraph or shorter, because I don't want to give some people unfair advantages, but the first and third have been short. And I'll open it up for you all to deliberate.
Has this work been done? Doesn't seem as if it's
That's what I was gonna say. It looks.
When did Francois do the rehab?
It was just purchased in the fall, and all the photos are from online listings, so nothing's been done. I don't think the purchase of a property with intent is worth an award.
Agreed. Agreed.
It is certainly a significant historic structure, beautiful, deserves preservation, and I'm looking forward to see what he does with it.
Yeah,
Can
come
encourage
back to
him
us in a
to,
year.
yeah, encourage him to nominate
Exactly.
when the work is done.
I was gonna ask the same thing, but, I mean, maybe he did do something. What did he didn't say
I
in
just
the-
would say, just maybe read the language again that was used on it and see if you guys think it would qualify for, that was used on the nomination, because I will say that the burden of making the case is certainly on the applicant.
Yeah, he says he purchased it to do it, to turn it to a bed and breakfast, but he doesn't say what he's done so far. So I'm not sure if this qualifies.
And conversely, it was nominated underneath stewardship. The two might not go all the way together, but just want you guys to make sure that taking in the whole application for all this
Okay,
stuff.
can you define stewardship?
It's, so we defined it in our thing as the ongoing preservation of a historic resource with necessary appropriate maintenance to preserve the character and integrity of the historic resource.
I would argue that he hasn't owned it long enough to steward it.
Yeah, I think we only purchased it. That's out, that's all that's happened, so.
So, I'm sorry, we're gonna break this down, okay, the slow people. He cleaned it out, that's stewardship. You didn't do anything new to it, you cleaned it out and cleaned up the,
Yeah, and I just want to, I guess, use the materials that were submitted here to have fairness for all of the applicants.
okay, I just need to understand, I was
No,
trying to
I know, and I'm not,
understand
not saying that to you, because, I mean, I have been in the property since it's been purchased.
right, so,
I think that there are things that I certainly care about that are happening that probably maybe not everyone cares about on the level of the interior of the property, right?
well, and here's the thing, I guess, and stewardship is a beautiful word, I like, okay. But if we could have had, what did he do? Like, when we went to do the windows,
Yep.
the guy said there was feces everywhere. So that's stewardship, because he had to clean that out first.
Yep.
Before you could do it. We don't know, what was it?
So, and I can give one example because it is pretty clearly shown in the picture. And I'm not speaking like this to be secretive or anything. I just want to make sure that we're judging the applications based on the merits of the things that were submitted to us in the applications. If you look at page 41 of the application, there's a picture with a fireplace in it, and there's very obviously smoke damage all over the walls in that room. It's my understanding that the flue was blocked before, but there were still fires that were going on, so there was a lot of smoke damage in the room. And they have been working to clean the decorative plaster, as, I don't know how clearly it's shown on that picture, but to clean the smoke damage off that. But that's, you know, one example, even though it's not spelled out, it is shown in the picture here of what was being done. And again, it's, you know, your guys' decision to say, is this stewardship? Was it clearly enough defined in this application, and is it something that we feel comfortable awarding a preservation award of merit to?
I would argue that it's not, that I'm happy to hear that they're doing work on this property, and, but in order to grant this kind of award, I think we need more information.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I agree. I mean, if we had a description like there was feces everywhere and we had to clean the walls, got it. There was a fire and we had to make sure that all the flue, you know, I don't know. Yeah, so I think we need more information.
How do we move to dismiss the nomination, or how does that work?
No one nominates it.
Okay, okay.
That would be fair enough to me.
Open the floor.
I guess to be
provides
completely,
opportunity, but
to be completely safe, you could just make the motion to say too that a denial.
I move to deny the Wood Upjohn House's nomination.
Yep. Since it's the positive, yes means the denial, no means to turn down the denial because you were moving in the affirmative.
I second it with a caveat.
Just have the discussion, I guess. Before you're gonna,
I think that, I think if we can send out a letter or some communication and let them know, can they please next year?
so they'll get the same opportunity as everyone next year to apply again, I guess is how I would respond to that. Again, I mean.
Well, but you know, when you apply to something and you don't get it, you would like to know why. And so I would
They can
say-
watch the meetings, I think, too, and I can reach out to them and let them know that you all felt that there was not enough information, I suppose. But truly, I think that the burden of proof, when we spell out in the application that we would like to see at least one page, not at least, at max, one page of stuff. So I don't think that a paragraph is
Okay. Well, then I second, then.
for a project of this, of this depth.
I second.
Now, are we saying yes to deny?
Yes to
That's
deny.
confusing. Okay.
Fred?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Lene?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yep.
Ryan?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
I mean, I hate to hurt anybody's feelings. And the house is huge. It's really nice.
It's a gorgeous house, and I don't think that we need to look at it as hurting feelings. I mean, I think that you all are the body that decides whether or not these awards go out or not, and it's the question of it. Does this exemplify the things that we're looking for? I don't.
I
The
know.
old adage that I don't think it's personal at all. It's just we're looking at these things based on what's been provided by the applicant.
I remember pointing out to Regina before that we had a denial for the interiors category because we couldn't tell if it was like to the standards. And we said they could apply next year and they did not.
Yeah,
And that's fine.
I think it is.
That's how it goes.
I think it is fine. So, all right, moving on to the next application submitted by Pam O'Connor. And I realized that Preservation Awards of Merit spells your name, Pam. I thought that was funny the other day when I was making files, so. The acronym for Preservation Awards of Merit spells Pam, and I was making them the other day and I noticed that, so.
Was that planned?
So, this one was for Community Homeworks. Again, I'm not going to read this whole thing. I hope that you all had the time to read it beforehand, and I'll open it up to you for deliberation.
This is the same grant that or funds we gave last year, correct? Am I right?
I'll let you.
This is this is the same institution which we granted funds to last year.
Last year.
But this is an award to the organization for their work.
Oh, for the work, got it, right.
Which we got a report of what they did with the funds. Was
Right.
it 2 months
Yep,
ago, I think?
and she came, yep, I remember.
I think this is a great nomination. Pam, and a great organization, and it seems like a very deserving award.
And Pam was detailed.
When is she
Surprise.
not?
I mean, in all honesty, all jokes aside, I think as we look forward to all things, especially, and not to go on a tangent, but especially when we're looking at grant applications in the future, anytime that you're going to be asking for something, I think you should be as detailed as you can with the parameters placed by the person that's going to be giving said thing, because you are asking for something from them. So it only behooves you to really go the extra mile and try to do everything you can to make your case within the set parameters. So I'll get off the soapbox about that one, but I do find it very important.
I move to approve this one.
I second it.
Roll call vote. Fred?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Lene?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam. Yeah. Moving along, and you were right, I'm sorry that I skipped over this one before. A nomination for David Bros by Barbara Bros. And again, this one is rather lengthy as well, but I'll let you all deliberate.
Former commissioner and our resident archaeological expert.
Isn't this the guy that came to one of our meetings when we were in? Okay. all right.
Yeah, I don't think many of us have had much overlap or any overlap with David Bros, but it seems like the work that he's done, especially, Regina had mentioned quite a few times the work that he had done with the reservation, I'm going to forget the name right now. Education Committee? Is that what it was? Okay, great. Sorry, I'm trying to find it, and of course I can't find it when I need it. Seems like his contributions to preservation and archaeology specifically in the city have been significant.
I agree.
Has he received, I can't recall, we used to get like the list of prior awards. Has he?
Sharon used to give us a list of everyone who's gotten an award before.
Sorry, Louise, that's.
No, I know that she did.
Okay, he is not, no, okay.
There's a list here from the last year's, but I did not compile going back to do all of them this year, no. I guess one, because the table as it existed was starting to get really wonky. That's the first reason. Second, I think that these should just be based on the things, this might be me retroactively saying this, but just based on the merit of the things that the people are presenting at the time of the award.
I think Barbara makes a solid case for the award, absolutely. This is quite a long list of his contributions to the city.
Can I move to approve?
Motions as the chair.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, then I will. I will move to award David Bros a historic preservation nomination, or historic preservation award, a Pam award, if you will.
Will you be our Vanna White?
All right, second.
And a roll call vote for David Bros. Fred?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Lene?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yep.
Ryan?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if anyone is watching out there live streaming, but thank you to all the applicants that took the time to fill those out. And I will start working on the planning for the next stages of things as well. Moving along, this is something that we had talked about in the past, and that is the giving again of funds to Community Homeworks for a continuation, if you will, of the gift that we gave last year for the critical home repair program. So I put the paperwork in the packet. That's the same that we had signed last time, and this is something that Regina was bringing up before she left. So just wanted to, I listed it as an action item to see if you all wanted to give that gift again, and I'll let you guys have it.
And the funds come from where?
This is from the O'Connor Fund.
I mean, I would like to do it again. I think it was an awesome opportunity for the community, and an opportunity for us to put ourselves out there as a committee that is committed to the city. However, in lieu of our prior discussion, I just think maybe we want to solidify how the money is distributed and which account it's coming out of and all of this before, so that we don't run out of money. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I'll second that, Lene, and that I think that it was a great experience with Community Homeworks, and it was wonderful to have the representative come and talk about all the ways that money was put to use. I think there's only positives from it. But again, I think about the sustainability of the fund as we move forward. And if this is becoming an annual gift to Community Homeworks, just again, thinking about the precedent that we set, and if we have the ability with the fund to make $20,000 in grants every year, which would, not saying that we're committed to that yet, but again, just thinking about the health of the fund.
Is there some concern that if we were to do this, we'd step on the competitive grant making process? We'd have essentially two channels for grant making, the competitive versus the legacy, or however we want to refer to it.
I think it's important to understand that the two are completely different streams of thought. Just because the competitive one can only go to buildings that are, it will never go to an owner-occupied residence, which is what the Community Homeworks one. And this doesn't speak to the complete encompassing legacy that you just referred to, and then the competitive one. But in this instance, the two would never, and I don't know if that's what you were referring to really, but the two would never cross paths, just because of the stipulations that were imposed on both.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Community Homeworks projects that were funded last year wouldn't be eligible for the competitive grant fund.
Okay. Yeah,
That's
that's
what you're
kind of
asking.
like, we have one path for competitive grant making and another one because we've done it kind of in perpetuity. Yeah, okay.
Can you wait until the public comment section? I'm sorry. Yes.
And as long as we know, because I kind of have that in my head as well. I thought in my head, okay, well, these people over here, they automatically get the 10,000 and these people have to compete. But as long as they're two different issues, we can continue with the homeworks projects. But in the back of my mind, I also am thinking, how do we know tomorrow we won't have another organization asking for the same concept and we want to give? So maybe we should start thinking about guidelines of how we distribute money. Am I saying that right? Did this make sense? Okay, I'm done.
So, yeah, and Pam, you are a subcommittee member, so you can come up and speak if you would like to. As a subcommittee member, yes.
Thank you. I know it's an exception under the regular rules, but I have been watching the fund grow for 20 years. I would like to say a couple of things. Number one, I don't think that an additional gift to Community Homeworks this year or even next year would threaten the life of the fund. Even if we were to, you were also to make up to $10,000 in grants from the competitive grant program. I don't think that you should consider doing a gift to Community Homeworks necessarily every year unless their work merits it. I think you're right, Lene, in your thought about some guidelines for making gifts outside of the O'Connor Fund from the city fund. But I would also caution you to remember that you do have an obligation to consider rolling money over from your city fund into the O'Connor Fund when it exceeds $5,000. So perhaps an exception or a small amount, but it definitely, perhaps this is something that you need to talk about at your annual review and put a subcommittee to work contemplating it. The money is here for you to do your work, but instead of giving all of it away, maybe some more generative programs out of the commission could be, the way to spend it as well. So, does that help?
Thank
I
you.
hope.
No, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking similarly about next month's kind of work plan session. That's next month, isn't it? Or we're going to be talking about the work plan in May.
Yeah, I planned to do it this month, but it's been a long meeting today, longer than they generally are today, and I didn't think it would have been fair to any of you, and it would have, to me, fatigued the mind a little bit if we had one that went on any longer.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you for not doing
No, yeah.
But maybe
And
next time, thing that we talk about, I thinking about this and then earlier, the building blocks request, yeah, I think that we just need to think a little bit harder about how we want to treat our grant-making abilities. And not to say that it's not to say that I don't think we should grant community homeworks the funds this year, but maybe we table this until a future meeting, if it's not an urgent request, and have the ability to think a little bit more holistically about how we want to treat grant funds.
How did this get on the agenda?
This is something that Regina was talking to me about before. I didn't put it on the last month's. I can't remember why. So I put it onto this month's. I guess truly as a holdover, we had talked about it. It had come up before about looking at the community homeworks monies being used again, if that answers your question. There was not a direct ask by any means from community homeworks for this to be placed on the agenda again.
So we don't have to vote on this tonight, if we could.
And to be clear, you as the commission never have to vote on anything at any evening. Abstination is different, and I would ask, and I don't think it's appropriate for any single commissioner to ever abstain from a vote unless there's a truly extenuating circumstance that makes it inappropriate for you to vote on something. Abstination would be, if you're directly involved, you would say, I abstain from the vote. As a whole, though, you guys do not need to do anything today, and it can be postponed. That is the case for every thing, minus, well, I guess like everything. You guys don't have some of the same rules that are laid upon the Historic District Commission, where there's timetables that are set upon things on such a regular basis as they do. But truly, the direction of all of these projects is yours to make collectively as the commission. I know it's probably redundant, and it seems like it's probably already evident, but yeah, so you guys can do what you feel is appropriate.
Well, then I would motion to table this discussion.
And I would move to postpone it until next meeting and specify when you want it to be postponed until.
I move to postpone this discussion until June of 2023.
Thank you for the specificity.
I'll second that.
For discussion amongst people.
Well, the only discussion I have is that we're gonna run out of money. I mean, I don't want to be giving it out. We need to have some guidelines. I mean, we have to be good stewards of the O'Connor Fund and the city account. So in order to be a good steward, I come from the school of organization, and I need to have a policy. So I just think we need to have a clear guidelines of how we'll be distributing this, because apparently the word is getting out that we have money and people keep coming in, and that's okay. I'm not mad at that, but I want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to profit or benefit off of our funds But, and I don't want it to seem as if we are biased to one organization than the other. So if we have something in place, a guideline, we're able to justify why we gave what we gave. So I'm done. Sorry.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Lene, and I wonder if we're going to be talking about this in like kind of a work plan session next month, if it'd be possible, Louise, to get some documentation, some like reports from like how the fund has done over the last few years, and if they have any recommendations about the fund disbursement, in order to make sure we don't overexert it. Okay, that'd be
Get
good
that
to-
input from the advisor.
Yeah, that'd be good to have for.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts or comments on this issue? Moving on.
Motion is still on the table for it.
Oh, we have to vote on that?
Yes. Yes.
I motion to postpone it until June of 2023.
And there was a second.
I seconded it,
Yep.
and then now we need a voice roll call vote, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's especially important with money matters.
Okay then, down the line, Fred,
Yes.
myself, yes, Lene,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Catherine.
Yes.
Okay.
Now moving on.
Sorry, not to be a stickler for.
Thank you for keeping us to the brass tacks. Coordinators report.
Yeah, short and sweet for this one. Next month, as Catherine was just alluding to, we'll do an orientation and training, and I think that we can also just split that one up completely with the orientation, I think, is a silly thing to do, and we don't have new members. So if there are things that you got, I know that Patrick and Ryan are the newest members, but if there are things that you all want to know about and are concerned with the operatively for this, please let me know, because otherwise it's a shot in the dark for me kind of to understand, like, what should we be looking at? You all, as I said before, are the commission, so if there are things that you have questions about, let me know. We can also use that time to workshop the work plan and talk about things like fiscal matters. As we all know, we have a vacancy right now. I've only received one application, and I'm not sure what the pushes look like from the communications team. I don't say that in a flippant way. I'm just not sure of truly what, if there's been a push singly for the Historic Preservation Commission recently. So I would like, I guess, to wait, and I'll set a firm deadline for when I think that is, so I can allow for other applications to come in. Moving on to the reviews. I guess they kind of speak for themselves. So far, we've had 19 total reviews, 10 hearings at the Historic District Commission. The count is already getting a little bit wonky for me because at the beginning of the year, we had one holdover that was from 2022 that was not finally decided until March of 2023. So understanding how I counted that has always been a headache for me. 4 administrative free, no permit reviews, and then 5 administrative $35 permitted reviews. So that's that for so far. That's all that I do have right now.
I have a question, just, this is kind of maybe a little bit random, but the review, the fees for the Historic District Commission reviews, do those just go into the city's general operating fund?
I would have to ask for that one.
Okay, I'm just curious.
No, and I know. I'm sorry that I don't have the answer for it. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It's a good question. The fee schedule is something that was set up before, was renovated a couple years ago, I think, specifically for us. It happened for a lot of people, but I think we were also impacted we being the Historic District Commission, so not you all, but collective historic preservation, it is something that is paid through BSNA Online, so I would imagine that it's not going to the Historic District Commission does not have a fund, so it's not going to them.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Any other questions on his report? None seen. Last order of business we have is commissioner comments. I'm going to open the table.
So I guess we were supposed to submit if we wanted to talk about our different committees, and we failed.
And please, please, please do. I try to reach out to you guys 2 weeks.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Much easier, and it gives us a very legible record then. Not to say that you can't provide comments right now, but yes.
Well, I just want to say that by you doing it 2 weeks in advance, that's why I came last week, okay? Because you threw me off. So, I'm just saying. All right. We finally met with Shiante with Shares. We're talking about trying to come up with some kind of program, and how do we recognize some of the historical places, people from Kalamazoo. So we do meet with her again in a couple of weeks, correct?
Yeah, that, and I think the Methodist Church.
Right. She sent us the email to that Methodist church, okay, because I'm wondering if I can get Pam to see if we can get it designated, because it's like 120 years or something, and I think that would be an awesome opportunity for us to start recognizing some of the minority cultures in Kalamazoo. So more to come with that.
And I will say that you all, as the commission, are charged. You all can write the nomination as well.
I
And
know.
I think that it would be a great exercise for the commission to do so. And it is a large undertaking. So I think that
But
just
Pam does
reflect.
such a wonderful job.
And historically, I think that
Wonderful
is something
job.
that we should maybe start to look back to, and we should do some of the legwork for that.
Okay, well then can we say that we have Pam's guidance? We'll ask for her guidance to see if we can write this document so that we can get it submitted. I think it would be an awesome opportunity for that church as well as the city of Kalamazoo. So that just said that. Anything you had to say,
We
Brad?
came up with, kind of brainstormed a number of places and buildings that can be recognized to be inclusive to other cultures in Kalamazoo. And I thought they were some pretty good ideas. One was the Allen Chapel, the Avery Drugstore strike. Second, this is a good question. The second Douglas Center on Ransom, I know that's been thrown around by groups trying to preserve that, but I guess it's in really bad shape, the one on Ransom. I was wondering if that definitely tells quite a story. Forest Hills House, which I'd brought up you said it's in the Vine neighborhood. I'd never located it though, but who is his granddaughter, this famous teacher? Forest Hills.
Wasn't she a principal or something?
I think so. I keep drawing a blank. Anybody familiar with,
I can't remember.
she went to Woodward School too, taught at Woodward School for a while. Well, it's right there. It's in the book on the Douglas Community Center that they put out. That doesn't sound, what's the name? That was brought up before, and it's another name, it's somebody else. Anyway, there's, coming up with the sites to designate and to work with is what we were. Oh, and did Shiante mention a web page of designated sites, putting out a web page that would?
So we're in the preliminary stages. We still have to meet and solidify some things and make some decisions. But those were our ideas so far and what we discussed during our last meeting, our first meeting. Just want to give you an update of what we're doing on the committee. Any questions?
That all sounds great. I just had one, this is related to this, but I don't know if anyone else saw in the, I think KPL, Ryan Gage just wrote something on their blog, and I saw a couple articles recently about Kalamazoo being the first city in the U.S. to have curb cuts in its downtown, publicly accessible curb cuts. And so it was like 1945, so like far prior to like ADA Act. So I thought for your project and for what you're working on, while this isn't necessarily talking about different racial structures, but it does talk about
Just a disability.
yeah, it speaks to a minority group, and Kalamazoo as one of the first city in the United States. I thought that was significant. So I'd be happy to share those articles with
Awesome, thank you.
too, if that's of interest.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Need a number of other, of recognition of other cultures or people who are not included in the narrative of the history, so.
Yeah, so if anybody has any ideas, please let us know. But that's a good one. I didn't know that either. Are we done with that one? Okay. How we did not meet this past month, but I will get a hold of Sharon, so we can, set up for the next, are we doing windows? What are we doing? I don't know. Something. We'll do something. And we will work on that because I think our goal, we said, was 2 or 3 this summer. So we want to make sure we get those in. So I'll reach out to Sharon and see if I can work with that. Any questions regarding that? Beautiful. Now, I was watching the news, and the news said WMU has funds for students for companies to hire students for summer work. So you know what I said? Did we contact them? Why aren't we there? Because don't we need students to take the pictures of the houses again? And they're paying.
Yeah, I think that's a great volunteer opportunity to just take pictures, I guess. If I was going to ask someone to do an analysis of it, me personally would consider payment. I think that historic preservation and public education, or public history, I'm working with David Benek's class, and we'll have something going in the fall, the public history department.
Well, and I'm all about volunteerism, but the reality is you're a college student, you're broke. And if you can come up with a extra something to bring in some funds,
Yes.
that's what they're going to do. So, we're not paying for it.
No,
You
we
and
can
you.
we can certainly look at it, I think. I also find that the service learning aspect of my education, at least, and the volunteerism aspect of my education, and aligning with what I wanted to do with the most enriching parts of my college education, and that practical education is very important, and the surveying of properties for historic preservation is truly the basis for all historic preservation. And we're taking a rather novel approach to it that people have not done in the past through the survey, is just what I will say. But I think that if that's something that WMU is going to put up the money for, I can certainly look into it.
Thank you, I'm done.
Any other commissioner comments? Well, I have some comments. I am a commissioner, right?
Yes.
Regarding the Grave Squad subcommittee, we did not meet still, so we need to do that. But today I did attend the National Trust for Historic Preservation webinar, the first in a 3-part series that Pam alerted us to. It was entitled Discovering Our Ancestors and Preserving Historic Grave Sites. So I learned some things from that, and I will type up my notes of my takeaways and share that with our subcommittee shortly. Does anyone want to move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Good night.